If a child tells you they have an imaginary friend, most people smile and move on. But what if that friend knows the house better than you do? What if their voice changes when they are angry? What if your child becomes scared to even say their name? Every story in this video has one moment where the adults could have realized this wasn't pretend. Stay until the end because the final story shows why the most dangerous imaginary friends don't always want to play. Back when I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend named Charlie. From what I remember, Charlie was always around from the time I was about 4 years old up until I was 9 when my family moved to a different house. So I spent 5 years talking and playing with Charlie. My parents encouraged it because I didn't have any real friends or siblings, and it wasn't uncommon for a lonely kid to create an imaginary friend to play with. I was a loner and still very much am today. Charlie told me he used to live in my house before my family moved in. I believed him because we often played hide and seek and he knew all of the best hiding spots. He knew things about the house that even I didn't know at that time. A couple of times I asked him where his parents were and why they didn't live with him in the house, and he never gave me an answer. After a year or so, he started asking me to do strange things like stealing change from my mom's purse or hiding my dad's car keys so he would be late to work. Random mischievous stuff like that. When I refused, his requests became much more sinister, telling me to push my mom down the stairs, start a fire in my parents' bedroom, and etc. Of course, I again refused. I was scared. Charlie became more cold, and instead of wanting to play, he only suggested doing things to hurt me or my parents. I was getting really scared of him. I never told my parents what he said, only that I didn't want to play with him anymore. When we moved out of that house, I didn't bring Charlie with me. I forgot about him for many years until a few days ago when my mother asked me if I remembered having an imaginary friend growing up. That's when all of this started to come back to me. I did some research into the history of my old house and found that there was indeed a young boy named Charles whose family lived in the house about 15 years before mine and apparently died at a young age, but I couldn't find any info as to where and how he died. Is it a coincidence that my creepy imaginary friend and the kid who died in my house share the almost same name? Why was he telling me to hurt my parents? Did I imagine him or was he a ghost? I'll never know for sure. I don't remember it, but my parents told me this. A little after I was born, my sister Julia had an imaginary friend named Jessica. She was Julia's friend for a long time when things started to get a little weird. At first, my parents shrugged it off as a normal occurrence, but after a while, they began to believe that our house was haunted. One night, as my parents put me, about 1 year old, to sleep, I began to cry and point at the corner. My mom was still in there with me and she began to try to comfort me, but I continued to cry and point at the same corner. All of a sudden, my sister walks into my room and points at the corner and yells, "Jessica, stop it!" Immediately I stop crying, and Julia says like it is completely normal that sometimes Jessica likes to put on scary masks and scare people. My mom, who was understandably freaked out, stammers to my sister, "Tell Jessica that if she can't play nice, she can't play here at all." A couple weeks go by and Julia tells my mom that her eyes turn green when she's mad and her voice gets deeper. My mom didn't know how to respond to this and just said, "Oh, okay." Eventually, Julia outgrows her imaginary friend and stops playing with her. A year and a half later, my little sister Abby begins to talk. She then goes on to tell us about her friend that no one else can see. She then tells my mom about how her eyes turn green when she is upset. I remember this distinctly because she dropped a pen and it scared me. She asked Abby what her name was and she said, "Jessica." Yes, I understand that it is a possibility that Julia told Abby, but there was a lot more creepy shit going on. My mom said stuff would be in a different spot, like the TV remote would be in the backyard or the dog food would be in the bathroom. She said she assumed it was me and my sisters. Abby confirms that sheet would move by itself. Julia is reluctant to talk about Jessica. Now I have a small sister and she is begin to talk. I am afraid that she will have an imaginary friend named Jessica. My cousin's daughter, 4 at the time, Madison, started talking about her imaginary friend right after they moved into a new house. She said her name was Jane and that she was scared of her. My cousin and her boyfriend just blew it off for a while. Little stuff started happening around the house. Doors would open and shut by themselves, lights would turn on and off, and they would hear footsteps. While all this was going on, Madison kept telling her parents that it was Jane. Naturally, they started getting more scared. One night, my cousin had friends over to stay the night because she didn't want to be there alone. Her boyfriend was at his friend's and Madison was with her grandma. Around 11, the bathroom door opened by itself. They all got a little freaked out but brushed it off. When they started to go to sleep, all the lights in the house started turning on and off, and every door started slamming. Everyone in the house left, freaked out. My cousin decided it was time to move out and hopefully end this Jane thing. It all stopped for about a week, and then stuff started happening at my aunt's house. Madison would cry to my cousins that Jane had a scary voice and wanted to hurt her dog. When you would ask her what Jane sounded like, she would talk in a deep, raspy voice and say Bella, her dog's name. Doors would slam, things would fall and break, and you would even see dark figures around the house. My cousin and her boyfriend just kept telling Madison that Jane wasn't real and that it would go away if she stopped paying attention to it. So eventually, Madison stopped talking about it altogether. The activity stopped for a while too. Fast forward a few years, and my cousin had another baby, Brannon. Weird things start again, and I mean really weird. My uncle started seeing really disturbing things, like family members having sex with each other disturbing. He went to the doctor thinking that something was wrong with his brain and he was having hallucinations. They did an MRI, a stress test, and multiple other tests to try and figure it out. Nothing. He's perfectly healthy. At this point, Brannon is 2 and saying that he's seeing people. Madison, now 6, is terrified. And if you ask her about Jane, she'll just put her head down and whisper, I can't talk about Jane. I don't want to. Things still happen around the house and everyone is convinced that Jane is more demon than spirit of an innocent little dead girl. I remember that I was always excited and would rush to get to bed, something that a kid never does. I would ask to go to bed early so I could see them. My bedroom was set out in sort of U shape. My bed was in the middle and everything was set around facing me. I didn't have a TV in my room and only had the basics. I was 5. I remember me laying in bed, it being pitch black with only some light coming in from my curtains when 2 kids would come out. I don't know where from. They seemed to step out of the darkness and would sit on my bed and talk to me about my day. They would say things like calling me a silly Billy. My dog Sophie would often come rushing into my room to jump on the bed. I would calm her down, kissing and petting her, but upon looking up, the girls were always gone. I think my room was being decorated with new wallpaper, and I stayed in my parents' bed for a few nights. They put me to bed with some warm milk, cookies, and a Disney film on their TV. The 2 girls would come out from my room and sit on my parents' bed and watch the film with me. I remember grabbing some cookies and my glass of milk and offering it to them, and one of them looking really happy, shocked, and the other girl just shaking her head saying, "We can't." They both had white night dresses on and their hair was in a bun. They never had any shoes on and they would come and see me almost every night up until I was 7. I honestly can't remember their names. This was over 20 years ago. They always seemed terrified when my dog would run into their rooms and vanish. My mom later found out that 15 years before, Two young girls got attacked by a neighbor's dog in our yard and unfortunately died. When my son was 2 years old, he started acting as if he was interacting with something or someone that his father and I could never see, like throwing toys down the hallway and then running away murmuring words. When I asked what he was doing, he always told me that he was giving toys to the boy for him to play with. There was never nobody out there, but it was always icy cold down that hallway and leading into the garage. I would ask him what the boy's name was, and he would tell me Don was his name. I asked what the boy was doing. Waiting for his mom to pick him up, he would always reply. We put it down to an imaginary friend and nothing more. Harmless, we thought. Until he started waking up in the middle of the night, screaming, saying, Don won't let me sleep. He keeps tickling my toes. This sent chills down my spine. And so my son would sleep in my bed with me every night. This continued for another 6 months until the real estate notified us that the owner of the house had died and his children would be selling the property and splitting the profit between them, meaning we had to move. After we left, I came across a local news article about the owner of our old rental, stating how much he will be missed by the community. He had been raised by his mother in the house we were renting since he was a child. Then I noticed his name and everything came flooding back to me. His name was Don. My son's imaginary friend was our home owner. He must have been waiting for his mother to come and take him to the other side. I'll never look at imaginary friends the same way.